Welcome to the Pot Stirrin' Podcast. Well, hello and welcome to the Pot Stirrin' Podcast. This is Wyatt here, and this is a follow-up episode to our careers episode that we did recently. And in this episode, we're going to have some success stories from some friends of mine who have done really well in their careers and have gotten a career. And they're going to tell you how they started and just tell their stories of how they started and where they got to, how they got to where they're at today. And so let's jump right in and see what these guys have to say. Well, we've got Michael here, and he's going to tell us a little bit about how he got to his career, what he does, and how he got there. Michael, go ahead and start.
Well, thanks again, Wyatt, for having me. I absolutely love talking about my job, and I think that's a big thing is loving your job, right? It's not about the money that you can make, but it's actually loving what you do. At the end of the day, it is a job. It is just a paycheck. You know, you do want to put your family as a priority, put church as a priority, right? I'm not going to just skip church a bunch so I can get a paycheck. But I do also want to, not want to gouge my eyes out every time I go to work, right? That's not worth it. And then if you hate your job, it bumps into your personal life, and it affects you in all areas. So you do got to look into that. But no, so I'm a pilot. I currently work for SkyWest Airlines. I got the 3 bars, the gold epaulets, all that kind of stuff, whole 9 yards, whole shebang, right? I wear the monkey suit to work. But what I like about it is it's a uniform, right? It teaches responsibility, maturity, confidence, all that kind of stuff, because you're the brand, right? When a passenger walks onto the airplane and they see us, if I'm sitting there and I got ketchup stains all over my shirt and it's not even tucked in and my socks don't match, all that kind of stuff, it doesn't inspire confidence in a passenger, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, a lot of what the values and the goals and all that I put at work portray into my everyday life of the ways I do things. And so that's been great. And that's something I've learned as I've progressed. And so really it started back in high school, and I'm an adrenaline junkie. Really, I like to, I think it would kill me if I had to sit in an office all day long. Because it's just like, I like to be outside, or at least looking at outside. It's a little cold up at 30,000 feet, but I still get to actually see it outside, right? I still get to see the handiwork of God, that the heavens do declare His glory, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, yeah, absolutely love the job. I started as a student pilot right as I graduated high school. Got my first level license there, and went up to Traverse City for college. Did that from 2018 to 2020. Graduated as a flight instructor, and absolutely loved that. Fell in love with that of just teaching, because it's great just to see somebody come in off the street. They know absolutely nothing about airplanes, aviation, propellers, aerodynamics, none of that. And then to see them, get their license or even go on their first solo by themselves in an airplane for the very first time. It's so rewarding to see that. And so I really, really enjoyed doing that. Really loved doing that. But aviation is all about experience. It's all about getting your hours, because it's not about how many years you worked as a pilot, it's how many hours you have as a pilot. So I got to about 1,000 hours there. You need about 1,500 to be an airline pilot. I first started getting a job at a corporate aviation place, just flying the bigwigs around. And that's an interesting animal on its own, because these people expect a certain level of professionalism, a certain level of expertise, but they also want to be catered to, which means I had to be at their beck and call all the time, which isn't always the most fun thing to do. I'm planning to go, spend vacation with my family here, but I got called into work, right? I got to drop what I'm doing and go to work. So that got a little old. Ended up going to this would have been May of 23. I went to SkyWest Airlines, got hired by them, went to training for a couple months, and October 23 officially did my first flight as an airline pilot. Really love that now because it's still you're still interacting with the passengers. I get to make the announcements of we've reached our cruising altitude of 30,000 feet. Please, if you remain seated, keep your seatbelts fastened in case we encounter any expected rough air. Right. So it's nice. They get off. They thank you. No clapping is not required because it's we don't want to be those people, right? But it's great, and it's honestly it's a job that is constantly changing, right? You have to be confident. One thing I'll tell people about when I went to training, it was like I walked in the room and instantly I'm like, I've never been with this many type A personalities in my entire life, right? It was a room of 25 people who were just completely just the most confident people you've ever met, right? I've never ran into that before. And I was like, wow, this is interesting because it's like you have to be confident. You have to make decisions. Oh, there's a thunderstorm up ahead. What are we going to do? Are we worried about icing? Do we need more fuel? It's a very engaging job, and I like that about it. That I'm constantly having to make decisions, sometimes quick or sometimes ones that affect me 3 hours down the line. So yeah, that's really what it's brought to, what it's come from, and in the future, I hope to keep doing this, support family, all that kind of stuff, and it's a good job to do that, because at the end of the day, you do, as a guy, I'm a provider, right, and that's just, a job is a job at the end of the day, so, let me think. I think that's really it as far as where I am now. That's how I got there.
So,
Go ahead.
So what pushed you towards aviation? Did you wake up one morning and decide, hey, I want to be an airplane pilot, or did you have some kind of cool dream about being able to land a plane that lost its engines or something like that? Tell me how you got to that position of being a pilot. What made you choose that career?
So I think for me, I had an interest in airplanes from the time I was a little child. Actually, instead of Matchbox cars, I had little metal airplanes, right? From the time I was 2. I actually do believe that my oldest memory is 9/11 because we lived right next to a major airport when I was a kid, and I distinctly remember a day that there was 0 airplanes in the air, and that never happened where we worked. And that would have been right around the time when that happened. So I think that was my earliest memory that I can remember right now. But loved airplanes, always enjoyed them, and I just figured, okay, well that's a rich people thing. I can't do that. I don't come from that. Went to an air show, saw the Blue Angels, and it's just wow,
that'll do it.
who could do this, right? You feel the jet engines in your chest,
Mm-hmm.
And it's just get you stirred up. Did a discovery flight on my 16th birthday, and was like, okay, this is great, but can I even do this? And they're like, yeah, here's how you do it. And that's the thing with aviation. It's once you set on that trail for the next 4 to 5 years, you kind of know, okay, here's 8 milestones that I have to cross, and until I cross, milestone number 3, I can't go on to milestone number 4. So it is a big leap of faith of when you say, all right, I'm going to be a pilot. It's a big leap of faith because you've now invested the next, 3-4 years to training, to becoming an instructor, all this kind of stuff. And so, for me, it was just this is awesome. I get to fly, right?
Right.
Everybody, I think that's the main one when people are asked, what superpower would you want? They always want to say, I want to fly.
Yeah.
That's the number one response to that question.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just kind of what it is. It's a big community, and it's when I saw it just as an outsider looking into it, making that decision, it was okay, this is really cool. Now that I've been in it for a while, though, it's you really do truly understand how cool it is. I still smile every time I take off because it's just you feel the lurch back of the engine. You lift off the ground. It's the best roller coaster ride you've ever been on.
Who wouldn't when your hands on the joystick and
right.
on the throttle? I mean,
you just feel that airplane come alive. Yeah,
right.
it's the best thing ever. I mean, they say a propeller is a big fan, right? Well,
Right.
it's on, everything's cool. When it turns off, you see the pilot start to sweat, right?
Yeah.
um, but I'm not afraid of heights. I'm hoping to get my parachute license this summer. So yeah, I really am an adrenaline junkie. I thought about being a cop for a little while. I had some people talk me out of it. But I mean, honestly, this is not a bad thing to replace that with. So yeah, no, I really liked it. Talked to a lot of people, and it's a feasible job because, like I said earlier, you have to be able to earn a living at some point in your life.
Right. It's a large commitment to get to where you are, and it takes work, but and it takes work, it takes time, it takes money, and it takes a lot of effort, but it's very, very, very rewarding. And not only do you have a job that you love, obviously, but you have a job that pays well and pays the bills and is not overly demanding either.
Right.
And that's great. That's ultimately what you should look for in a career. And as I've said before, you should look for something that you like and that will serve your purposes, rather than something that is not quite gonna serve your purpose. Like getting an art degree and trying to go into art or music or something like that. There's no. If you love it, hey, all power to you, and you feel like you can live on that kind of income, by all means do it. But getting something like this that is a real career where there's real demand, you can make real money with it, especially in our day and age where you can move up in the world and move up in your build your wealth and that kind of thing as you go through life. That's what we're looking for, and it sounds like you've done that well.
That's what the saying is, right? If you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life, right? So that's the goal.
Yeah. Must be nice. No, I'm kidding. I love what I do.
It's not bad. It's weird hours. My sleep schedule is in shambles, so I have to be careful how I sleep and all that, because it's completely messed up.
Right.
But there's pros and cons to every job. So as far as it goes, it's like I'm never afraid getting into an airplane. Does it help my prayer life? Sure, but I'm not going to get in an airplane that I feel like this might crash or this might be a problem, right? I know enough at this point to know what's safe and what isn't.
Right.
But yeah, so as far as that goes, yeah, I've never had that worry. And if something goes wrong, I know where I'm going when I die, so I've got no problem with that.
Absolutely. Well, and also, you mentioned having a wife and kids and having a family and that kind of thing, and this would be a feasible job for that, as far as monetarily and time, and with the amount of time you're working and that kind of thing, it would be very feasible to do that as well. Correct?
Right. Yeah. It takes a little bit to get some decent seniority. Like I've got weekends off now, but it took me I think 8 months to get to that point. So there was a little bit of church I missed out on. And so you really got to be on yourself. You got to really, make sure you're in your Bible, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Because it's easy just to get sucked into work, right?
Right.
And that's where you get into your life where you have to purpose to do things, right?
Right.
I think it was Daniel purposed in his heart that he wouldn't get defiled with the king's meat, right?
Right.
You set out, and now you're walking with purpose. You're saying, okay, this is what I'm going to do today, when I'm going to do it, and it makes you stick to a schedule. It helps you just get more efficient with your time too, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So, right. And then that then prepares you to have a wife and kids, have all that kind of stuff,
right?
Because it's responsibility, and that's for a guy especially, working a job is good because it teaches you responsibility, hard work, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so yeah, no, absolutely. Any job you do, I mowed lawns in high school. Absolutely great job because you're sitting there and you're you're sweating. You know, it's good to sweat every now and then, right? And it just goes from there.
Right. Well, that's great. Well, thank you so much for sharing, Michael. Before I leave, I do have one more question though before we sum it up. And
Yes.
we talked about your career and that kind of thing, and talked a little bit about where it's going to go. But I presume that if you stay in aviation, this is something that you would be able to continue building adding to your hours, and eventually having more job opportunities as you stick with it along down the road. You have more job opportunities and more ability to move up, and more ability to make more money as you go throughout your career. Correct?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, there's always a bigger airplane, right? You sit
Right.
there and you'll roll to the airport and you're like, oh yeah, we're the big dogs, and then you go to another airport and there's a huge guy over there, right?
Yeah.
So there is always that. But I've almost reached to the point now I could retire from this company.
Right.
Because they say the bigger the airplane, the bigger the suitcase. That means the longer you're gone.
Right.
So that goes back to the whole quality of life thing of,
Right.
well, how long do I actually want to be gone? Is making this much more money worth being gone 4 or 5 extra
Right.
nights a month? Right?
But the fact
so
is, you have that choice. You have
correct.
opportunities.
And that's the nice part. Yeah, that's the nice part of aviation. You can start. Everybody has to start from square one, but from there, I'll say it like this: the sky's the limit. So.
Right. Yeah. No pun intended.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And to add to that, you obviously would have opportunity to move up, and that would allow you to.
Absolutely, yeah.
To move up, not only just make more money, but also eventually work less hours and make more money, put more towards retirement, give more to the Lord. And
they say it's perfect for homeschool families because, say, I'm gone for 3 days, so they do school for 3 days, and when I get back, I like math, so I'll probably teach math when I'm home. But besides that, they just don't do school when I'm home.
Right.
So it's almost perfect for that.
That's great. That's awesome. Well, and it's great that you've thought about all that, throughout this whole thing. And if there was ever, something that came up, I'm sure you would have revisited it. But that's great. I appreciate you so much for sharing that. And it's definitely a success story in the area of careers. And and also on top of that, you were homeschooled. Is that correct?
Right. Yes,
right,
sir.
Man. You don't need
Top
to.
of my class.
Yeah, right. You don't. Not that there was any competition, but. But no, that's great. A lot of people say that you'll never do a good enough job at homeschooling, and yeah, I mean you didn't have an issue, and I didn't have a problem either, and I have several other friends that didn't have a single issue, so that's great. Thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate you sharing, and
my pleasure.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
All right, Wyatt, take care.
You too.
Thank you.
All right, now we're going to hear from my friend Joseph from Waco, Texas, and he is an electrical contractor, residential and some commercial electrical contractor in Waco, Texas, and he is going to give his story about how he got to where he's at. So thanks for coming on, Joe, and share a little bit about your story.
Okay. Hey, Wyatt. Yeah, let's see. I guess I'll go before I started electrical. I was doing like yard work, and ranch work in my teens. I just liked working with my hands and, kind of learning what I could, so I'd just go out with the ranchers and fix fence or plow or whatever they'd throw at me. And then I guess probably 16, 17 is when I was really looking at kind of what did I want to do long term, because wasn't going to cut it on the wages you could make as a ranch hand, So
can't be a grunt forever.
no, eventually your body gives out and you need somebody to do the work for you.
Right.
Trying to remember the names of them. I had a few books that I was reading back then. I think one was like "What Color's Your Parachute" or something like that. Um, and there was another one or two that I had that just kind of They were helping. They helped me focus on what I like to do, and and then once I knew what I like to do, it kind of would have lists of what kind of jobs would fall into those categories, and then also had kind of the rough wage, at least wage averages for those jobs. So I kind of just, I mean, it was kind of like it wasn't like I wanted to be an electrician or didn't want to be an electrician. I just kind of narrowed it down to electrician or actually stonemason was the other one I was kind of interested in. And that was kind of based on the kind of work I liked and, working with my hands, but also some skill involved. And then, better wages on average than most other jobs in the category I was looking at. I'd already ruled out stuff like, computer programming or something like that. That's not my cup of tea.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So you
that's
weren't
kind of,
you weren't necessarily concerned about working with your hands. You weren't you weren't interested in sitting in an office.
yeah, that was kind of one of my biggest, um, I guess you could say deal breakers was I needed something that I was going to work with my hands and use my mind too, but I didn't want to just sit in a cubicle the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how I narrowed it down, I guess. And then some people had, I'm talking to different people back then, and some had talked about going to like a trade school or something. But doing some more research, I kind of, at least in Texas, it seemed to make sense to go get a on the job just apprenticeship.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kind of back then I was just watching Craigslist, and and then I was, it's definitely a God thing where He kind of brought the right guy to work with at first because I didn't really know what I was looking for, but
Mm-hmm.
um, I found a guy just looking for a couple helpers, and it was just a one. It was just like a one man plus a couple helpers kind of show for a couple years.
And he
But
was an
the good
electrician.
he was an electrician,
Okay.
yes, yeah, and but the good thing is, now that I look back, was being a small crew like that, we kind of got involved with all kinds of work. And so my first few years, I learned commercial, residential, new construction, old construction, like just a wide range of kinds of work. And then I found out later that people that go into larger companies to start with, at least with electrical work, they tend to get routed into a certain part of the work, and then they so they become a master of one little little part of the trade, but then they don't get exposed to everything else. So
Mm.
like if they're bending pipe, that's pretty much all they do is bend pipe. And I know guys that have done it for 20 years and they've barely touched a wire.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, yeah, I didn't know that at the time, but I mean, I guess God had a plan, and it kind of worked out where I got a kind of a wide range of work at the beginning. And then the guy I was working for, he got a couple more guys, and then we started doing more on the road work, which once again, at that time of my life, it was a good learning experience. We would go, we went all over Texas, all the way from Alpine to Texarkana, and then all the way down to close to Brownsville. And we just kind of, I started out at, I think, $8 an hour. Of course, this was a long time ago, but um, I had friends that were making quite a bit more doing things that were not as, not starting at the ground level up. You know what I mean? Like they
Mm-hmm.
could make more at a factory or at sometimes even like a restaurant or something. But the thing was, I was wanting to get the skills. So to
Right.
me, getting paid anything was better than having to go to college for it or to
Right.
trade
Right.
school. So I kind of just gradually came up from there as my
Where
skills came up.
where are those guys now? That's the question to
They're
ask.
still that's the thing. They're still there, and they're probably not making much more per hour than they were back then. So
Right. Right.
having a longer term goal in mind, I think, is really important because when you're I started electrical at, I believe I was 19, and so when you're that age, you can kind of get caught up in the $1 or $2 or $3 an hour difference,
Mm-hmm.
and jump jobs, but sticking with one person or one company and learning all you can from that place, I think, and working towards something is just much more, to me, in the long run it pays off. So
Right. Right.
um so anyway, I did that for, I think I worked for him about 5 years, and then he actually closed down so that he could go work for the state. We had done so many contracts for the state that they basically begged him to come work for them. So um but once again, he gave me, because I'd worked for him that whole time, he gave me a nice little severance package, and his advice. He was a real good guy to learn from. But his advice when he shut down was, he said, don't go get another job till you get your journeyman, because we've been working so much. I'd studied some, but I just hadn't got around to taking it, and so I took that advice. I kind of just spent a little bit of time studying and getting ready, and then ended up passing first shot on it, which was kind of a surprise to me because I'm not great with books. Um, but it just helped, getting there. And then the good part there was I actually got several people called me, because small towns and all that. Word travels around that someone's looking for a job, and so I got several job offers. I didn't even have to look for a job, and with just having gotten my journeyman, I had like an instant like $5 or $6 pay raise, just having that piece of paper. And I'm not one to always believe in a piece of paper being important, but you know it does kind of speak to in the trades. Like if you're actually dedicated enough to get it, it kind of speaks to where you're not just in it for a paycheck. Sometimes you're actually interested in it as a career.
Right. Right.
Um, so, but yeah, the timing was just kind of neat because I could have taken it a little earlier, but you have to have at least 4 years in. So it really kind of worked out timing wise. And then let's see, then I worked at this other company for, oh, it's hard to remember, probably about another 3, 4 years. Um, and once again, like I could have jumped around, made a little more by going to a different company, or you know, looking for a dollar here, a dollar there kind of thing. But being at just being steady and showing up to a job and all that, I got some pretty good raises, and I got the company the second company I was working for. They kind of specialized in houses, especially custom houses, which I had done some of, but I hadn't had a specialty with the first company. We'd actually done more commercial. So I kind of learned more of the custom houses, I guess you could say. And but because I'd had so much experience with other stuff, they once they figured that out, they kind of put me in charge of service, which they hadn't really done much of. But kind of started a service division of that company. Um, and they just started advertising for that. And so then, it just kind of all paid off where I got all that experience and then was able to broaden the scope of work for that company, I guess you could say. And then, just actually showing up on time and stuff like that comes that in the trades. That's actually kind of a rarity. You may
Yeah.
you may have run into that.
Oh yeah.
So, so
Trying to get them show up, and then that is a big deal, and then trying to get them show up where they're not uh, under the influence of something is an
mm,
entirely different fight.
yeah,
But
yep, I've definitely experienced that too. So let's see. After a few years there, the the company just started going in some directions I wasn't really comfortable with, and it was, I guess as you can see, I tended to stick with a company, or before even companies, I'd stick with a farmer or whatever I was doing, just until there was a reason I shouldn't stick with it anymore.
right,
And so I was just getting real kind of uncomfortable with how things were going. It was just a mixture of bad management, not the best employees, and just several other issues. So I was kind of neat. I don't have many stories like this, but I was it kind of come to a head one day where a good friend of mine that worked there um walked off a job, um and quit, turned in his company truck over some of the same stuff, and it kind of brought it right to my attention. And so I was kind of praying that day, like, hey, you know if I'm supposed to stick around or leave, like I'm not one to just leave in a huff over something, but also if it's time to go, it's time to go.
hmm,
And so I was just kind of praying for some kind of a clear message about it all. And then the owner of the company calls me. I'm like in the middle of a job, and he calls me and is like, "We got to talk." And okay, so I go into the office, and he's like, "I just need to know, like, are you leaving or are you staying?" And he's like, "I just need your word, like which way you're going, because everything's kind of going crazy." And the other guy had left, and yeah, he's just kind of wanted me to, commit. And so I just knew that was the confirmation I needed, that it was time to scoot
hmm,
scoot out the door. So and they were, the guy that this kind of, I guess, brings up the point of, don't burn bridges. Is my thought on work.
hmm,
We're supposed to kind of be like, as Christians, we're supposed to, you know, be just open and honest with people, and not let our emotions get in the way of, I feel like, as
right.
being business like and professional and all that. And so, yeah, anyway, we parted on good terms, the whole company and I.
That
But
doesn't
some of the other
always
guys,
that doesn't always
some of
happen that way. That's
no, it
pretty
doesn't. And
good.
some of the other guys that left, they were great guys, but they left on pretty bad terms. So
Yep.
just
Yelling and screaming and getting mad generally don't make things
yeah,
better.
throwing work truck keys, stuff like that just doesn't really
Yeah.
pay off.
Yeah.
Uh, so, but the the kind of cool thing about that was, well, I'll get to it in a minute, but the that company actually was referring me work, once I started my own company.
Well, you think they
Once,
were referring those other guys who were throwing keys? You
yeah,
think they were
that
referring them work?
that's exactly what I'm getting at.
even
Yeah,
if even if the
so
company did, do them wrong,
wrong then,
I
right,
mean, yeah, they wouldn't be. They still wouldn't be sending them work.
right, exactly. So keeping that kind of professional courtesy open and all that really, really did pay off for me. So anyway, so back to so I left that company without a plan or anything. I was just like, well, we're done here. So I had actually just finished getting my hours in where I could get a master's license, and I'd actually not been real interested in starting my own company. I'd seen, I guess I'd seen the pitfalls and the the ways not to do a company. So I was not thrilled at the idea of being my own boss. I was because I mean, being a journeyman and then I was about to become a master, like you can make good money and you can have someone else pay for a nice new truck and get some good benefits and it just all that sounded real good to me at that point, not starting something new.
Yeah.
But same thing, I just kind of prayed about it and I got to thinking about it. I was like, well, same as when I got my journeyman. It's like I'm between jobs. This is perfect time to go ahead and get my master's, and then even if I don't, start my own thing, or even if I don't use it, at least I've got it.
Right.
So I studied. I got that knocked out. Got my master's, and during that time, I was thinking about it. I was like, well, at that point, I didn't really have many bills. I was single. I was like, well, let me just try to try to do something on my own. See it, if I hate it, I can, with a journeyman and a master's license, I can get a job anywhere, anytime. So if I start falling behind on stuff, I'll just, you know, stop doing my own thing and I'll go work somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started, I just researched. I started an LLC. Uh, I got a lot of good advice from the first guy I'd worked for. I went and kind of had a chat with him about it all, and he kind of referred me to some things and gave me some good advice, I think, for starting out. And yeah, so that's how I got going. And at first, it was just kind of referrals from the first company I'd worked for, because he'd gone to work for the state, but he was still getting calls from people looking for
Mm.
uh, work done.
But
So I
if you
did a
left
little
on
bit.
bad terms, that would have never happened.
Right. Yep.
If
And
you
then
had
that's
yelled or thrown keys, you probably
exactly,
wouldn't be getting those.
exactly. And that second company, same thing. They started sending me stuff because they couldn't find anyone to replace me, so they kind of shut down their service department, which I felt a little bad about. But that was kind of, if they can't, they can't, right? So,
Right, right.
and then I kind of started looking around and bidding some commercial work, which I'll be honest, I kind of like commercial over residential
Hmm.
myself better. So I just enjoyed doing that and
You don't
just
have
kind
to
of
deal
did
with a homeowner.
exactly.
Yeah.
And change orders are actually change orders with paper and not a verbal call at 8 p.m. Hey, I want to move this and do
Yeah.
this and do this for free.
That they don't want to pay for. That's what I was gonna say.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So that was a good little, I don't know, I guess a couple years where I just kind of kept it small, did my thing. I got one or two guys that we would kind of team up on bigger jobs, and then got a couple helpers that would help me when I needed help. So that kind of worked out for a few years. And honestly, I really enjoyed that time because I could kind of pick what I wanted to do, and
Mm.
um, yeah, it was a good couple of the 3 years.
It reminds me of that verse where I don't have the reference, but I remember the Lord was. I think he was talking to Israel, and he said, uh, "Dost thou remember when thou wast little in thine own sight?"
Yep,
Yeah.
it's kind of like that. Yep,
Yeah.
yep,
Sweet days of starting out where you weren't working every day.
yep. So I was, I mean, I was working probably I was working quite a few hours a week at that point, but also I was, I had a couple other businesses going, and I was kind of juggling them all, and doing some traveling because I was still single, and um, yeah, it was just kind of a good little phase. But what started happening, and this was somewhat, I don't know. I guess it was just it was a gradual thing, but I think God was same thing, kind of poking me to move a different direction, I guess. Was I was getting more and more, and I kept turning them down. I was like, I'm not gonna go into custom houses, but I kept getting these builders that were like calling me, and they knew me from those other companies, and they were trying to get me to come do their work. And I was like, well, I'd never signed anything that, from the other company that I wouldn't go do, try to take their business. But I was also like, I'm not really wanting to do these houses, and there's not as much profit in houses as there is in commercial, at least on electrical.
Mm.
So, if I was going out and doing the work myself, I mean, commercial was the only way to go, or service calls. That's that's where the money is, but
Mm.
it's a lot of headache too.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So,
then you get the callbacks too. They're like,
right.
"Oh, it went out again," and you got to drive
Hmm.
another hour over to fix it. And yeah.
Yep, that does burn up your time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, I kept kind of turning people down on that stuff. I just wasn't really interested or wanting to go in that direction. But I guess, let's see. So that was about when I got married, I guess, right around then, and things started changing where um, having a wife to actually do the stuff like take care of the house and some of the other little businesses I had going, she
Hmm.
kind of took over that stuff. So then I was kind of more focused on just electrical. And I guess I started realizing, I was like, well, I can stay small and keep doing what I'm doing, or I could try, getting some employees and taking on some bigger contracts. But if I take on these bigger builders and contracts, I'm not going to be able to do it myself. Like it's just not going to happen.
Right.
And so I was just kind of like, well, kind of same as starting my own company. I was like, well, let's try it. I'd seen how it was, how how not to do it,
Hmm.
and I was like, I wonder if there's a way to do it.
Yeah.
And I think you kind of remember. I think you were in Waco at that point. That was kind of about when I started thinking about it, and I was
Yeah.
like, well, let's just kind of see what happens.
Yeah.
um, and so I let's see. I took on one big builder that had just um he had two other electrical companies that kind of left him high and dry, and he was looking for somebody to take over all his work. And so it was kind of like an all or nothing
Mm.
kind of
Yeah.
deal. And so I went from, let's see, two two or three people on payroll at that point, to suddenly I was like, I need to, if I'm gonna commit, I'm gonna have to find more guys fast. And so I went from two or three guys to I hired, I think, another three guys. So I went to six, I think six full timers in like 4 months or something like that.
Ooh, man. Yeah, that's a big leap.
And yeah, and having to, in electrical, you can't just have them go. I mean, you could, but to do it right, you can't let them just go in their own trucks, because they're supposed to be labeled and be company trucks and all the laws and all that stuff.
Right.
So I had to like outfit three trucks
Yeah.
and get guys rolling, and then and it was kind of a big leap because everything else goes up too. Your insurance, your
Right.
You know, supply house bills suddenly went from a few thousand to, you know, tens of thousands
Yeah,
a
yeah.
month. And so it was kind of like a make it or break it kind of thing.
More money comes in, but more money goes out too
More,
as
more
fast as
money
it
goes
comes
out. Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
Sometimes
So there was,
faster.
yeah, faster than it's coming in.
Yeah.
Yep. So there's about 6 months where it was like, well, this is either going to work or I'm going to go broke and have to kind of go back to one man, and
Right.
operation and fire everybody.
Right.
But yeah, but it really did work out.
And now
That,
you've got how many employees?
12 full timers and two or three part timers. And
So
that was,
close to 15
yeah,
all in
close
all.
to that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty
Yep.
good. And
And I'm running 8 trucks right now.
yeah, so you've taken that from being just an hourly laborer over years because you stuck with it, and then eventually started your own business, which business is not for everybody, but you went in that direction, and uh, now you've got 15 employees, and you were telling me earlier it's starting to free your time up and that kind of thing too. So it's starting to kind of starting to work on its own. So eventually you'll probably get to a point where you'll be making enough money to where it'll be running pretty well on its own to where you'll be cutting your hours and but still making enough money to prepare for your family and all that well and prepare for retirement.
Right. And that's kind of my goal right now. So, I'm still working 50, 55 hours a week minimum,
Mm-hmm.
right now. And that's kind of part of being a business owner, I feel like.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
But, I am trying to move towards where more of it's done by employees. To grow a business, I think you do have to put in the hours,
Right.
because the only way you're going to have enough profit to reinvest and grow it is if you're doing it yourself, I feel like. But yeah, I see down the road, hopefully, where I can cut it back, spend a little more time with my family, and do a little less. Right now I'm pretty much just doing management. I'm not in the field. I'm doing troubleshooting and
Right.
all that.
But that does
So
give you more flexibility though too,
it
because it's
does.
not like you have to be if you're not on the job, you don't this stuff doesn't get done.
Right.
Although it still does feel like that whenever you have 15 adults who can't be adults,
Right.
and you know what I
Sometimes
mean.
sometimes I'll say I'm basically a big babysitter. That's
I know the feeling. Yeah, but you've said all this, and you've talked about your business. You've given some good information about your business and how you're running it and the thing and what it's like and that kind of thing. But the biggest deal about what you've done is that you now have control over your future rather than your future having control over you. Because I heard you saying that I can, if I want to make it bigger, I can. If I want to scale back, I can. If I want to go back to a one man show, I can. That's a lot of options.
You're right.
I
That's
mean,
true.
if you're working for somebody for on an hourly rate, there's no way to do that to move up and do if you're especially if you're hopping from job to job to job, you're at the mercy of the next employer to hire you. You have no
Right.
control over your future. But you now have that control over your future. You're the boss. You're running life now, and you're choosing where you want to go with it. And then
Right.
eventually, longer term, you could sell your business for a lot of money and retire or put that into a new business and buy something else that cash flows more. But
Right.
you have options. That's the thing,
Exactly.
you know.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
if you would have stayed working for a farmer or something like you're talking about, or like the acquaintances of yours that you said were working at restaurants and that kind of thing, and they're still doing it, making the same amount of money or maybe a little bit more. but they have no options. They're at their future is literally hanging on them going to work the next day.
Right.
I mean that's it. But
Right.
you have options. You have ability to control that. Am I right?
Yes, that's true. Yep. And just putting in the work to have that flexibility, I think is worth it. Going from let's see, the first year I started was 2019. That's when I started my company. I think that year we now these are gross, so this is not what I made. Nets sometimes is very low, as you know, for a business owner.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
going from I think first year was like 60,000 or so gross.
On your own?
Yeah. On my own.
Right.
Yep, first year, as which wasn't, I thought wasn't bad for a first year starting
No,
out.
not at all. And that's labor
Um,
and materials, right?
right,
Yeah,
that's
that's
both.
total
Yeah,
gross. Yeah. Okay. And
right.
and of course your insurance and all your expenses came
Yeah,
out of that.
everything comes out of that, correct. So, honestly, I think on paper, I don't really think I made anything that first
Well,
year,
that's what you try to do
but
anyway.
that's
So,
what you're trying to do, yeah.
yeah. On
But
paper we don't make anything, but yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But then I think this last year, I think we went over 1.5 million gross, which going from in 6 years, going from that to that, and all it, like, I didn't really advertise. I didn't go out there and take out a huge loan to start a company. I did it, you know,
Organically.
organically as I found people and as I had money to invest into equipment. I
Right.
didn't go out there and spend $300,000 on trucks and then, okay, well, now I need to get the work to keep people running.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was it was like sometimes it's like, well, I can't keep up with the work, but I don't have the capital to get another crew going right now, so we're
Right.
just going to stay at this size.
Right.
And that's how I've grown, and I feel like I mean, some people go out, take more risk, but I feel like it's better to grow as you can,
Right. Right.
um, and organically, like you said, because then if things do fall apart, or if you have a recession or whatever,
Right.
you're not, I mean, you hate to lay people off, but if you have to, you do it, and then as long as you don't have too much debt, you're fine.
Right.
If
Right.
you run up hundreds of thousands, or some companies run up millions in debt, you're like you're 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 finished.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
So
I mean, in my estimation, real wealth is not how much how much you've borrowed.
right,
Like a lot of young people nowadays, well, people in general, not just young people, but they buy homes and they buy 5 homes at 250 grand a piece or whatever. They're millionaires.
right,
But if all of that debt came due, they wouldn't have a penny to put on it. They're not a
right,
millionaire. A
yeah,
millionaire means that you're worth $1 million. That's what you're worth. Okay, that's what you
exactly,
own outright. That it's a scam. It's like they're not a millionaire. Yeah, you have. It's like Robert Kiyosaki is one of the richest men in the world. They say, and he's got he's a billionaire, but he's billions of dollars in debt.
right.
Like, well, how much is he really worth?
Yeah, you have to look at the um your your what you actually own, and then you take away what you owe, and then that's what you're worth.
Right,
And
exactly.
just because you have billions of stuff, dollars worth, but if it all comes due, if you only if you're only worth, let's say $10,000
Right.
after that, then yeah, you'd be
It's fake.
yeah,
You
your
know.
local retired guy that's got a little, $80,000 house paid off, and a little $5,000 pickup that's paid off. He actually owns more than that so-called millionaire.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, good. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I really appreciate your time doing that, and we appreciate that, and congratulations on on your trip to success. there. And I mean, forget the get rich quick stuff. You go from what 60,000 to 1.5 million in 6 years.
Yep,
If that
pretty
ain't get
crazy.
rich quick, I don't know what is. I mean, of course you weren't making all of that, obviously, but the
Right.
point is that you were building an asset that was
Yeah.
a money making machine that just gets better and better and better. And that's awesome. So thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
Well, thanks for listening to this episode, and we will continue with a few more success stories in a following episode. So stay tuned for that. Thanks so much for listening, and I will see you in the next episode. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to the Pot Stirring Podcast.